let's go ahead and jump in and get started. So welcome to extend the power of your e-research system and or Kuali Research through no-code automation. I'm the facilitator of today's session. My name's Katie. I, just so you know, am the product marketing manager for Kuali Build, which is the product we'll be talking a little bit about today. And just before we jump in and get started, a few small housekeeping items. Just so you know, like I mentioned, this is going to be a webinar format and not a meeting. So all attendees will be on mute throughout today's presentation. But if you have any questions for us, just go ahead and click on that Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window and feel free to type your question in there. And again, we have a content-packed session, so please pay attention, be on point. We're excited to share some of the really neat stories that some of the research administrators and or technology administrators through our customer base have been doing with Kuali Build. We will, like all other sessions, go ahead and be recording this and posting it following. So if you'd like to see the content or share it with someone else, just know that you can watch for them in the next couple of days. Today, I am joined by Brad Cohen, who is the Research IT Software and Systems Specialist with the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Thanks for being on the line, Brad. Susan Morgan, the Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Studies with Southern Illinois University, and Amy Taylor, who is the Director of Sponsored Programs and Research for Southern Connecticut State University. I'm going to have each of you, as you go through your sections, give a quick introduction of yourself. So I'm not going to take that on just yet, but with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump into the meat of the session. And I'm going to toss it over to Amy to tell us a little bit more about herself and what she's done with Kuali Build through Kuali Research.
Thanks, Katie. So I'm Amy Taylor. I have been in research administration for about 23 years, and I've been at Southern Connecticut State University since 2017. When it comes to Kuali Build, I consider myself the pioneer. We picked up the software in January of 2020, literally when it was about 6 months old, Katie. And we went live with our first form within 6 weeks, I guess from mid-January to March 1st. And then of course the pandemic hit. And so Build has been a really integral part of how we've managed our research platform from afar and from a remote state. And my favorite Build feature is the dashboard for the individual apps. I know later in the presentation, Brad's going to show you his desktop. I'm not going to show you mine, but that is my favorite feature as far as Build is concerned. Let me tell you a little bit about SCSU. We're a predominantly undergraduate institution located in New Haven, Connecticut. And we're really just like an R1 university, except, we have the same research compliance regulations, we have the same basic business processes, but we have really limited resources and staff. And that means we have to be very, very focused and strategic about how we pioneer innovation on our campus. And what's really crucial is we have to be nimble enough to seize any opportunity we can to improve our processes. So when I had the opportunity to bring the Build as an innovation to my campus, I would like to say I moved heaven and earth to make it happen, but I really had to jump tall buildings with a single bound in order to get it implemented and to get it started very, very quickly, which I don't think happens in larger institutions as much as it does in a smaller institution. So why were we interested in Kuali Build? Well, in the late fall of 2019, we used paper forms for what we call faculty supplemental pay or 1012 pay from grants. And we also used paper forms for adjunct teaching appointments. And between those two paper forms, we processed around 2,500 a year. And those forms would get lost, they would get misdirected while they were in transit, and then we would get significant errors and delays in the processing of those things. There really are only 8 steps in that workflow. It's a very straightforward workflow, but we'd spend hundreds of human hours trying to figure out Did you fill out the form correctly? Did you send it to the right spot? Where is it in the process? Did you walk it somewhere, or did it get lost in the envelope and lost in the mail system? And if Kuali Build could help us straighten out this mess in any way, it would literally transform my campus in what really is a very, I mean, it's just unbelievable, the kind of transformation that it would be able to provide. So the next question is, what happened? Well, we actually applied for, there was an opportunity or contest that Kuali had, where we applied to be one form developed and deployed, and we were selected for that contest. And our kickoff was in mid-January. And like I said, we deployed that form on March 6th. We did in-service training with the key approval units before the pandemic closed all of our physical operations. The one form that we implemented, that 1012 supplemental pay form, over the course of the last 10 months, we've had about 100 of those forms processed, and we've not lost a single form. Now, if we were losing something on the order of 30% beforehand and devoting hundreds of human hours on those forms to find them and reprocess them, or bring them back into a usable state, this means we recovered an enormous amount of time that we were spending in correction of the mistakes. Our typical process time for these forms, it can take a few days, but basically every 2 weeks, anything that's sitting in the queue that has been approved and ready for payroll gets processed. This means that we no longer have faculty who are waiting months and months for their supplemental summer pay. We also, everyone in the workflow and some key administrators have the ability to view the dashboard and see how long things are spending in routing and find out when things are stuck. And basically to reach out and move it along so it doesn't have to be delayed. Now, COVID-19 delayed implementation of the adjunct teaching form. That turned out to be much more substantial and complicated than we expected. And for this academic year, Southern chose a different route, and so they're not using Kuali for that teaching form, but we hope to complete development on that process soon. So what do we do now? How do we use it now? After that one form, we began our implementation, and we have developed an after-the-fact payroll certification system. This is essentially our effort reporting system for personnel services paid from grants. Now, a larger institution might use a specific software for effort reporting, but because we're a smaller institution with not necessarily a very large federal complement of grants, we were still developing our effort reporting system, and we were able to transform it into a process within Kuali Build, so that on a monthly basis, we generate a payroll certification form, send it to our PIs, they approve it or they deny it if there are errors. And this has just cleared our audit. In fact, we had only one minor finding because one of the reports that we developed, or that we pulled from a different system in March, had a data entry or a data error in the query. But the Kuali Build program allowed us to track and document that the certifications are going out and that they're being certified within a timely basis. And we can reach out and pull them off as PDFs whenever we need to. We work pretty closely with our faculty development office. We have 12 different apps that we've developed that accept internal grant applications, the filing of reports, the creation of or budget modifications. And so by working with faculty development, because we support those internal grants, we have now 12 different apps that they use. We have about 4 apps that we use for pre-award notifications and some post-award requests and processes where we're communicating with our faculty, where they're either sending us notifications that they intend to submit or notifying us about something that's going on within their grant, or they want to hire somebody. So there are a variety of different communication tools that we've developed for that. We're working on our communications with our finance units. We generate the request for cost transfers or for budget updates or inactivation requests. And this has allowed us to, through that dashboard, to really consolidate what we're doing and how we're communicating. So we don't have to look at a person's individual email anymore. We can actually dynamically use that system to send notes back and forth and to document when the request is made and when the request is completed. And the sort of out of the box thing that we did was we actually developed some COVID-19 procedures for the campus in the summer of 2020. There's a lot of uncertainty about what the campus might do and how we might provide access to the campus. But we developed two forms that were particularly helpful. One was the lab safety plan, where it had to be developed, submitted, and then approved by their dean, and then held in documentation. And the other was something called a request to visit campus, where we developed the form, moved it through a fairly simplified workflow, and then worked with our university police to give them view access to the dashboard, where they could document the actual approved time and date and time of the visit to campus, but all of their officers could actually look at the dashboard and figure out if the person on campus was supposed to be there. And if they weren't, well, then of course they would deal with those things. Now, since then, the university has moved on to some more sophisticated tools, but these were very helpful to be able to quickly deploy them as the situation was changing over the summer of 2020. And so that's where we are now. And I'm busy developing 3 more forms this week.
Thanks so much, Amy, to go
Sure.
through that. I always love hearing you talk about some of the things you've done, particularly I think with the experience we all went through in the summer with COVID. I love when you explain how agile you were able to be in that initial process. You know, one of the things that I was thinking about, and this is a time, by the way, I have Q&A up on the screen. If you have a question for Amy, we're going to do questions after each presenter goes through what they've done with Kuali Build. So feel free to type it in there. If you don't have that question right now and you want to hop it in at the end, we also have time at the end of the session. But one thing that I think might be helpful to walk through, Amy, is when you are talking to someone on your campus that doesn't know what Kuali Build is, what do you say to explain like the power of what this tool could do, particularly if they're in the research department?
We use this as an additional tool to our campus enterprise systems that hold and store documents. And we use it as a very basic communication and documentation tool. One of the things that I especially like about it is that we can design a form or an app that will communicate information from my office to a faculty member and back again. And then everyone on my team, because we're a small team and we have to often cover for each other, everyone on my team has access to view that form and to view that information, so that if for some reason we have to substitute and cover for the other person, most of that information, all of that information is available to everyone on the team. And so it really facilitates that sort of electronic platform for the team to communicate. Now, most universities, my university is using Teams and WebEx and all kinds of different platforms to be able to share information and document information. But this Kuali Build provides us with a very simple and flexible tool to be able to design a communication or approval process, move it into operation, and then move it out of operation if we need to. The other really great feature about it is it's so much more flexible to adjust and change. Once the app is created and the link to use it is published on the website, I can make minor updates or changes to the form or the app without having to update the website and update 100 different copies of what might be out there. As long as you're accessing that form through the primary site, I can make minor nuances and changes to the form on the fly as it's happening without having to disable the form. This has proved pretty exciting, particularly in the faculty development area, where they might have an idea of how they want the application to look and feel and behave. But once it gets in operation, they're like, oh, that's not working. We need to tweak it or change it. So it's basically it's the next stage of communication tool for us, for our campus, in terms of gathering information, sharing information, and easily documenting what's happening within certain grant processes. I don't think I could live without it anymore.
Love that. Well, thank you, Amy. We had one question come in, and I'm just gonna, just for time, maybe see if we can answer it quickly, and then we'll go on to Susan. But Ron had asked, do you manage the users and their roles, or is that something the IT group manages from a sign-on process?
We have a SAML single sign-on process where if you are logged into the central university systems with your Southern Connecticut email and user ID and password, then you can access the Kuali systems. And we have our setup set so that the first time you log on, it creates a user profile for you. So I don't have to manually manage who can access the forms and who can't. And there is a feature on the forms where you can make it available to anonymous users. So this is particularly helpful for our student population. If we have we have one application where a student can apply for an internal support grant, and by giving it an anonymous access through the publishing part of the form, then students don't have to be logged into the system. They can access the form, fill out the information, and submit it into routing to their faculty mentor and their department chair without having to be physically or authenticated within the university systems. But all the other forms require SCSU authentication, primarily for security purposes. This is the way which we keep non-SCSU personnel and faculty, or people, out of the system. You have to be logged in as a user. But it creates that user ID for me. I don't have to monitor it at all.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks for going through your use case. Next, we're going to go ahead and toss it over to Susan. So Susan, kick us off.
Great, thank you. My name is Susan Morgan. Currently, my role is Associate Dean in the graduate school. We have our centralized sponsored project within the graduate school. I came up through the ranks in faculty. My background is actually environmental engineering, which I think impacts how I approach Kuali Build and looking at it for making our processes more efficient. So for my role with Kuali Build is really a champion, and I put, plus the it says cheerleader and must have mistyped cheerleader, and a kind of cat herder to get everybody working and using the system. And my favorite feature is actually the routing part of it. So the impetus for us to look at Kuali Build was we have a large number of internal funding programs, and we needed to work, try to reduce our workload associated with these. So both on the pre-award side and our graduate studies side. So we have programs for faculty and graduate students to support their scholarly activities. Some are competitive and some are not. We have a staff of 4 in our pre-award and 2 in our graduate studies who helping manage these programs. So why are we looking at then Kuali Build for this? So we've had Kuali Research for a few years now. I can't remember when we implemented, but we've got a lot of the modules, and we've got had positive experience with Kuali Research and the Kuali company. Again, those routing capabilities was key to it. The configurability for a range of our programs, like I said, we've got some that are competitive, some are not. We have different review processes associated with them. Some are very straightforward. Some go through a school and college committee, as well as a chair and a dean. They come over and they go through a committee and the graduate school. So we needed that configurability. And then the price for unlimited apps. So I needed it, the impetus was on these internal funding programs, but I'm sure everybody's offices, there are a lot of paper processes. And so I was looking at, we get these internal funding programs done, and then we can move on to some of our paper processes and move them into Build. So our actual process itself, we kicked off in May of 2020, so we were in the pandemic when we started this off. I wanted all of the internal funding programs live before the start of our fall semester in August. And I knew that was ambitious. I wanted that because I didn't want the process to drag on and on. So we get some of them up, and then in a year, 2 years, we finally get to the rest of them. And not only that dragging on, but then having the students and the faculty confused. Is this one of those programs we go into Kuali Build, or is this one of those programs that is still a paper process? So we got them all live by the end of the fall semester. So that was right before Christmas in December, including 3 new ones. So because we didn't have enough internal funding programs, we managed to add 3 new ones this year. Plus we got some other forms actually put into the system. So my director of graduate education really embraced the system. She's learned the system. She's very good with it, and saw the potential applications. So on the graduate studies side, they've done event registration and management processes, as well as various other internal processes and paperwork. And we even decided to do feedback form and launch that, where people can anonymously, as Amy was saying, there's that feature, or actually tell us their name and give us feedback on any of our graduate school processes or staff interactions, any of that. So the key features for us beyond the basics, and by the basics, I mean that there's no paper to get lost, right? It's all electronic, and you have those approvals that are electronic. So we can require fields to get the information that we need. So you can, to submit, you have to fill in certain fields. You can have it a field that, it's a text field, or it's a number dollar field, so that they put in the right type of information. We can use the same application for the review process, so there's no downloading and uploading. We don't do this for all of our programs, but for some of them we have, and we've gotten very good feedback from those committees that have used it. And we can electronically notify everyone of the decision. People were funded or they weren't funded, or send them back for corrections if there's some information that was unclear, or they put something in incorrectly. Our major lessons learned. One was this process of getting the staff started one app at a time. So if you'll recall, I had that very ambitious timeline because I wanted to push everyone, but I also wanted everyone in the system learning it, because I did not want only one pre-award staff person to know how to use the system. So what I did not realize is they would just start opening an app for every single internal funding program instead of focusing on one. And that goes into this second bullet, where we needed to develop a standard format. So all the staff could easily jump into a form or into a workflow and understand what is going on. So an example of that, and this caused me some major grief. So the different programs, different people putting the application workflow together, you could approve it, which would be, you'd have to approve all of them, even the ones you were denying, or you may be denying some and approving other ones that approve. And so we didn't have that standardized. And so it wound up that we had a funding program that everybody got notified that they were the selected person when there was only one person selected. So that caused a lot of problems that could have been avoided by taking that step back and having a standard format for everything. And I found that, which is bizarre to me, and I think it's my engineering background, that there's this tendency to just take this paper process or paper form and verbatim put it in to the application. And SwiftGo is like, we don't need to ask for the submission date because they're going to hit submit and we're going to have when it was submitted. You know, there's an easy example of it. So not even beyond the just thinking about, you know, when you're changing systems, thinking about, do you really need that information? What's, you know, how can we improve our processes? So that's a piece of it, but just that basic shift from what you're asking in a paper that you don't need to ask in an electronic system. So those have been some of our major, or like perhaps I should say my major lessons learned and through our process in it.
Thank you, Susan. I really resonated. I was just walking someone through that concept, I think earlier today, of we don't need a date because the system collects the date. So yeah, that totally resonates with me. You know, as always, like I said, this is Q&A. So if you have a question, pop it in that box and we'll see if we can get to it in the time we have. One question I have for you, Susan, is how do you believe Build has extended and enhanced your use of Kuali Research?
So I think a key part has been having them trying to get all of our systems into electronic systems, right? So in Kuali Research, we've got our pre-award, our award part, we use protocols, all of that. And so people are now kind of used to that being an electronic system. But having these other processes, then we're all electronic, right? And so we can leverage that and leverage it for the people who don't necessarily use Kuali Research much, haven't gone after funding, especially like new faculty. So get them used to the electronic system, and they're obviously not exactly the same. Kuali Build is different. It's a more straightforward and intuitive than part of the Kuali Research modules, but it's still getting into that mode.
One question that we had from Shelley was, does Build interact with any of the other modules for Kuali Research?
We don't have them connected. I mean, we haven't even done that. So maybe I'll boot that back to you. Is it actually possible to connect them?
We do, good question. So we do have quite robust API connectivity through Build, and you can use that to connect to the Kuali Research API. So out of the box, an integration doesn't exist currently, but yes, you have the ability to connect the two systems using APIs.
And I know we have leveraged some of the configuration work we did in Kuali Research. So like our unit hierarchy and those sorts of things that was there. And we've leveraged that for Kuali Builds kind of the other way.
Well, with that in mind, thank you for going through that. If you still have questions for Amy or Susan, go ahead and type them in that Q&A box. We'll have time at the end to go through them. And I'm actually at this point going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to toss it over to Brad, who will share his and show you a little bit of what they've actually done with Kuali Build.
Bear with me a second here. I'll share my screen. Okay. So my name is Brad Cohen, and I am in the Research IT office at UMass Amherst. Been there about going on 2 years. So my Kuali Build role would be the builder, and we put limit pusher here because we've built some pretty expansive workflows that at times were, you know, very large and tricky to get working, but we work through it. My favorite build feature would be the integrations. And so why did UMass choose Kuali Build? We needed a more robust tool that could handle the sort of complex forms and workflows that we'd been struggling to streamline. The other tools were extremely limiting as far as adding multiple approvers, being able to designate which fields each approver could edit when it came to them. And Build was our answer to those forms. This is that all apps dashboard that Amy was talking about. So as of today, we have 15 live forms with more being added in development all the time. And we do make use of the Kuali Research APIs and the Build integrations to pull the research data into Kuali Build. And so this is just one example of one of our integrations that we currently have in use. This one uses the Kuali award number as an input to pull in the other award fields like the title and sponsor. These are just a few of the ones that we have selected as the outputs, but when you get into the APIs, there's a lot more than this that you could actually output. So it's a simple addition to a form, but this integration meant no more concerns about typos in the text, no needing to cut and paste from the record itself. Once you enter the valid Kuali award number into that field, the rest populates automatically. And so we make use of this integration on our Memorandum of Understanding form for post-award, which was actually the form we used as our litmus test for whether Build was the right tool for us. What made this specific form so complex was the number of users that could be involved and the data that needed to be gathered at the various steps. Every PI and co-PI needs to approve the form, and if there's a change from what was in the proposal development record, approvals also have to be sent to both the department and college levels. So that meant having a workflow that included a separate branch for each possible number of co-PIs, with a sub-branch for each that would include approvals for the department and college if the situation called for it. And no other tool that we tried could handle this type of workflow. And any that we did try resulted in some frustration for the researchers and our post-award staff. And not only did it allow us to accomplish what we needed, but the time it took for the forms to come back went from weeks, or in some cases months, all the way down to hours or days. We also make use of the APIs to sync the user list from Kuali Research into Kuali Build on a daily basis. And so this means all of our other forms could then be migrated into Build, and any UMass user with an active account could access them. We've also been able to sync the existing approval hierarchy from Kuali Research into Build. So there was no need to reinvent the wheel for form approvals when we already had that information in Kuali Research. We just had to push that data into Build. So we took the primary and delegate approvers from the existing groups in proposal development and migrated them into the Build groups hierarchy that we use on our forms. And this is also updated on a daily basis. So any approver changes that we make in Kuali Research automatically flow into Kuali Build. And so that streamlined the workflow of something like an access request form. All you have to do is enter the unit you want access to on the form, along with the type of access you need. And the form already knows who should receive the approval based on what unit you selected. We went live with Build in February 2020, just before everything shut down. And so this meant we had the right tool for the job when we needed to come up with a way to have researchers request to regain access to their research spaces on campus. Not only could it leverage the existing unit approval hierarchy that was already in place for proposal development, but it also could send out approvals depending on what sort of research was being conducted. So based on the answers to specific questions on the form, the appropriate approvals are included in the workflow. For example, some additional approvals were needed for specific research locations on campus, as well as for something like human subjects research. The raw data was then exported from the Build form and able to be transformed by one of my colleagues into Tableau dashboards that could be used to analyze things like building capacity, do contact tracing, and track the research activity across campus. Last but not least, we also use Build form for our research help desk, which gathers the right information from the users and uses a notification to send the request directly into our ticketing system. And that was what I have.
I love so much about that presentation, particularly how you reinforced your limit pusher comment at the start of it. I think one question I have for you, Brad, would be, as you were going through that initial process, how did you get buy-in for Kuali Build as you were presenting it as an idea?
So that memorandum of understanding form that I had mentioned earlier, we had that in Adobe Sign, and UMass was doing away with Adobe Sign and going to DocuSign. So it was sort of the right time for us to find a different home for that form. And it had at that point moved backwards into being just a PDF that got sent around. So when we were doing our testing and put that form into Build and saw that it could do exactly what we needed, when we showed that to the people involved, you know, that got us the approval.
We do have a few questions in the chat. So John had asked, have you had to integrate any middleware via an external web server to address anything that was not possible via system APIs? And do you have any examples of those?
So we haven't had to do anything like that yet. Right now, I mean, we're still exploring what we could pull into the build forms, but the APIs are pretty extensive. And so, you know, we're slowly working through what we can pull in, but we haven't run into anything that we couldn't yet that we've tried.
We had another question from Chad about the Tableau dashboards. How was the data exported on the Tableau dashboards?
So on the document list in Build, where you have all of the forms that are submitted, there's an export button that does just export it all to a CSV. And so that data was then manipulated extensively to then import into Tableau in a number of different ways.
I can answer a little bit on that too. You also can use Build's APIs in order to integrate with another business intelligence tool. And it's possible, in addition to exporting out of the system, to push directly into a business intelligence tool as well, if that's something that your team desires to do. And then from Zachary, we had a question. Do you have any additional examples of forms you created in Kuali Build that use data from Kuali Research APIs beyond MOU and PD access request forms? And he also asked the question about Tableau.
So most of the forms we have in there right now, aside from those few, are mostly like data entry, but we do have our reopening form, what we're using to facilitate the reopening of campus that I had showed. That form we also export the data from to get into Tableau, but it's you know, using the data from the CSV.
Perfect. Well, I think that's what we had for today's session. So Brad, if you want to just click through to the next slides, we still have some Q&A. What I will say, just as part of this, so keep adding some of those questions. We'll hang on the line to address some of the additional questions. If you want to go to one next slide, Brad, I will highlight, Amy had talked about in her presentation, the idea that you won your first app, Amy, through a build contest. So that's something we're doing again this year. If anyone that's on the line is interested in applying for that contest, we're running that through the end of Kuali Days. So final submissions are due March 12th. And the contest gives you the opportunity for one build app for up to 2 years. So feel free, go ahead and if you're skilled at QR scanning, type that there. Otherwise, we'll be posting an announcement about the build contest in the Socio app today as well. So you can just watch for it there. With that in mind, we're, like I said, going to hang on the line to answer any other questions that come through. So feel free to keep typing them in there. And while we're waiting, Kat, I know you had a few additional words to say kind of about the end of Kuali Days for Research. So while we're waiting for some more questions, do you want to hop in and say that?
Yeah, thanks so much, Katie. Yeah, so as Katie mentioned, sort of this is one of the 2 last sessions for the Kuali Research track. So I just want to, you know, provide a couple of closing remarks. I think for me personally, it flew by this week. It's already Thursday, and sort of that's it. I've attended a lot of sessions, and I've learned a lot of things with how our customers are using the Kuali Research. And now attending this session, it just blew my mind with all of the different capabilities possible with Kuali Build. So I hope others have had similar experiences where they've still learned some new things, even for the veterans who've been using Kuali Research for many years now. I do want to let you know that there will be a post-conference survey that will be going out to all of the registrants. So that will go out via email. So you should be getting that from us shortly. So I would encourage you to complete that once you receive it. Also, the recordings for most of the sessions will be uploaded into the Socio platform with the sessions. I think there may be just a couple where we didn't record the sessions based on the presenter's request. But for the most part, you will see most of the sessions recordings. And again, they will be uploaded into the Socio platform along with the presentation decks. So if any of the participants have been presenters, and if you haven't shared your presentation with me yet to date, feel free to send it my way so that I can get it uploaded into the Socio platform. But for the most part, I have received most of them. And then the platform itself, the Socio app platform, is going to be available through the end of October of this year. So you'll have any time between now and October to access the platform, be able to watch the videos and get the slides if you want to. You can also continue your engagement through that platform. So if you want to ping people, communicate, post things, again, that will be up and available through the end of October. And as Katie mentioned, we do have the build contest, and sort of that's how Amy got exposed to the Kuali Build platform. So I would encourage you, just as Katie did, to go ahead and submit and win your own Kuali app and see what that's all about. So that's all I had for sort of my closing remarks. Again, I hope everyone enjoyed the research track. And if you've registered, you do have access to the other tracks as well. So I would encourage you to continue to participate through the next couple of weeks and see what other teams are working on. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kat. We haven't had too many more questions come through the Q&A. Oh, we just had one. Zachary had asked, for Amy and Susan, are there any other forms you didn't mention that you found really complement Kuali Research?
I'm working on our pre-award spending approval. Just haven't managed to get it completed yet. Not that it's super difficult, but that's to get that form in, and then we can use that to kick off, obviously, creating an award for somebody who's got an official notification, but we don't have the documents yet.
And so for Southern, because we're a PUI and my office centrally supports all of the research activities from idea to archive. So we have Kuali Research, we have protocols, we have Build, and as the functionality of Build becomes more public on campus, as we build more forms and we interact with more faculty or more staff, what we're finding is that while I'm using it pretty much to try to transform any existing paper process that is specific to research administration at Southern, what I'm finding is that it's coming to the attention of other faculty and staff units that are going, oh, we could do this. We have access to DocuSign or PDF Sign as well, or it's still a paper form, but we like what's happening in Build so much for research. Could you build a form to do this? In fact, I had a meeting this morning with someone who was like, we'd really like to do this. Is there a way that we could access the Kuali Build functionality to do something additional on campus? For our part, my university was entirely paper-based in 2017. So this transformation from SneakerNet, completely paper-based processes, to some kind of an electronic platform literally has integrated the research function into some form of electronic support in as little as 3.5 years. We literally have gone from 0 to 60 in no time at all. I am delighted to have seen Brad's we practiced this, but it's amazing to see what he and his unit have been able to do for UMass with the software. And frankly, I have dozens of new ideas and about, oh, I hadn't thought about that. when I got the software nearly a year ago, it didn't automatically integrate as easily. The APIs weren't available. The feature updates and things that are happening literally every single month are changing and transforming as almost every week, what I can do with it and what kinds of ideas I might have. And while Southern uses it in a somewhat simplified manner, any paper process, if it's anything that is a paper form that we have to fill out, we are quickly transferring as much as we possibly can into that Kuali Build and going to integrate it as fast as we certainly can. So it supports, I mean, there isn't an aspect of research administration at Southern that Kuali Build doesn't support in one form or another, either in a very simplified communication tool, or as it's not nearly as complicated as some of the workflows that Brad has developed, but we could be there. I mean, we could get there one day. Brad, you're going to be my hero for a while.
I just wanted to quickly ask, and I think it was interesting how Brad mentioned they're using Build for their support tickets. So I was wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more on that. You know, I'm assuming users are clicking a link, fill in the info, and then are you using APIs to feed that data into ServiceNow, and sort of how that process works a little?
Yeah, so you know, we had originally been just using a web form on our web page that gathered the information, but once we got Build, we just generated the form, and the form itself is pretty simple, just gathers the usual information you'd want, but it's actually a Build email notification that sends an email to one we created that redirects it to ServiceNow. And so ServiceNow consumes it, and based on which email it ends up at, we have a few, it ends up in a specific assignment group, depending on which one it went to. Because, you know, since these are just text really that we're gathering for the tickets, it tells us what we need to know in the main body of the ticket when it comes in.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a comment that Paul, I think Brad with UMass had shared in our chat that said UMass, and feel free to comment on this, Brad, is finding that using Build brings a consistent interface from a user to a form that has a lot of added value. So the API integration with routing and approvers, it has allowed UMass to implement a lot more paper to electronic form conversions. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to comment on that, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because so our support forms are now in Build. Like I said, our reopening form is in Build. So the faculty, the deans, department chairs, they're all seeing the same similar sort of view for everything that they're needing to interact with. So approvals, things getting sent back, say in Build for different things going back and forth. It's meant that one system look can keep things nice and streamlined and less confusing for our users.
Great. Well, we'll hang on the line maybe 1 or 2 more minutes and see if any last minute questions come through. But if you don't want to hang out with us, feel free to hop off. And just to wrap it up, thank you for taking some time today to spend a little bit more time to learn about how other research administrators are using Kuali Build. If you have any questions for us, feel free to connect with us or your account manager or customer success manager after the session, and we're happy to share more about Build. So again, thank you, Amy, Brad, Susan, for taking your time to join and share your stories and experiences with Build. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. If you join for the final virtual, I think there's wine tasting or learning how to wine taste tonight, feel free to hop on that and get to know some customers a little more. Otherwise, have a good rest of your week. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.